Awesome.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sharin Stories. I'm your host, Peaks, with my two beautiful co-hosts, Sarah States and the real St. Paul. This is not a therapy session. You will not find mental health professionals here, nor are we a substitute for said people. We are just regular people sharing our stories with mental health. Today, we are lucky enough to have an amazing person sharing their story, an ex-porn star who has switched paths to perform his true calling, using his journey to help guide those who may have lost themselves. You can follow his captivating and inspirational stories on TikTok and Instagram under Joshua.Broome. So everyone, please welcome Joshua Broome. Thank you so much for coming on, Joshua. So I know my introduction does not give you nearly enough credit. So really quickly, just give a little introduction about yourself that you want to everyone to hear.
Yeah, so my name is Joshua Broome, and I was in the adult film industry for 5 years. I was in over 1,000 movies. I won a ton of awards, but my story is, yes, that was part of my story, but my story is now what? And I think that's everybody's story, and that's what I'm passionate about. So that is something I did, and my story is not allowing that. I hate to say it a mistake, because we all are a sum of our life experiences, but that is something that allows me to have a lot of leverage when it comes to social media and influence and things like that. And most recently, I have decided to jump on TikTok, which is really cool, because actually today, 3 months ago, I hopped on there and I just kind of shared my story, and I didn't really think much of it. And like 6 million people saw the video over like 2 or 3 days, and it was just really cool to see that. I didn't know that I was this really popular meme. I actually had no idea. I had no clue about the meme or anything about it, and I did a little research into it, and it had been shared across all platforms over 100 million times. And but here I am now. So my wife and I, we own a nonprofit, and it's called Known, and we are passionate about leading people to discover who they are, their most authentic self, and not allowing past hurts and just whatever you've been through in your life. We don't want you to believe that you can't be whoever you want to become or do whatever you want to do because of something that has happened to you or a mistake that you've made.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a wonderful message. I'm really excited to kind of now dive to this point of this belief or this mindset of you need to help anybody and you need to, yourself found. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into the beginning of where it all started. If that's possible for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I won't go back to the womb, but long story short, but I grew up in a really small town in South Carolina, and something that did impact my life is my mom had me when she was 16, and I grew up without having a father in my home. But I guess the unique circumstance in regards to that was my father lived in the town that we lived in, and he just being 16, I can understand, now, but at the time I didn't understand why my dad didn't want to be my dad, and especially because I would see him at the grocery store and things like that. So, he never did anything detrimental to me, other than just not choosing to be my dad, I guess. And that made me feel rejected. And that was kind of me needing to prove myself my entire life, me feeling that I need to receive the affirmation that I'm not getting from him, regardless of where else I was getting it. Because my mom's incredible. She's never, regardless of how much of an idiot I ever was, she never stopped believing in me. She never stopped connecting with me. She's never stopped not supporting all my decisions, but she was always there for me. But anyway, I go to college, I join a fraternity, party my butt off, and then leading up to that, I had started modeling when I was like 14, 15 years old, and I was having a lot of success in that. And I chose to drop out of college and pursue modeling and acting full time. And I moved, I had a Jeep Cherokee that I'd saved up to buy, and I sold that, and I sold pretty much everything I could find. And I moved out to Los Angeles, was specifically Hollywood. And I found out really quickly that the success that I was having, I was a kind of a big fish in a small pond, but all of a sudden, everybody was out there to be successful. Everybody was grinding, and it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. And I had a lot of success, but not as much success as some of the people that were around me. Like I was represented by the same agency that like Tyson Bedford was, and it's like obviously I'm not having the same success that he is. So all of a sudden I'm in the game that I played my whole life. I'm playing the comparison game. I'm believing that I'm not as successful as I actually am because I'm basing my success on not what I'm doing, but the people around me. And I think that there's a big lesson in that. If we live in a society that we are so impacted by influencers and social media and numbers and things like that. And I based my worth or based my success on, did my life look like those around me? And to some regard, yes, but I wasn't as successful. So I always felt like I needed more, I needed more, I needed more. And that caused me to live far beyond my means and just trying to keep up. Like we would go out to bars and stuff, and I would buy bottles and max out my credit card, just so I could hang with them. But I ended up working at a bar full, kind of like part time, just to make some extra cash, because modeling is pretty seasonal, and it's not like, unless you're a top dog, like you're not like living off of that, especially living the way I was living in the middle of Hollywood. But anyway, I was working at this restaurant, and there were a group of girls sitting at this table, and they were like, "Hey, have you ever considered being an actor?" I was like, "Well, actually, I am." But they were talking about adult films, and I was like, "I don't know how old you think I am, but I'm definitely of age. I don't know why you think." They're like, "No, we're talking about porn." I was like, "Whoa!" I was like, "I've watched it before. I never thought about being in it." And you're like, "We would really love for you to meet our agent." And I was like, "Okay, whatever." I didn't really think much of it. Like I was like little like naive kid like from South Carolina. I don't know, but I go and meet with our agent. And I'm thinking we're gonna go to like Motel 6, and it's gonna be like super sketchy, and like I just have this stuff in my head. It's like, this is gonna be so sketchy, and I'm gonna be out of there. But we roll up to this place, and it's in Studio City, which is kind of like a suburb of like Hollywood, and it's like in this like gigantic like megaplex, and I mean there's like a private elevator that goes up to his office. In his office, it's like a movie. It's like I go into this giant office, and he's got this bald guy, and he's this English guy, and he's like, "Hello." It's like, I'm like, "What's happening? Like, is this real?" And someone who was very insecure at the time, just desperate I wanted to be famous. I wanted to like have all these things. And he told me everything that I wanted to hear. He said, there's not a lot of good looking guys like in the industry. There's definitely not a lot of guys that have the ability to act. And at the time, the porn industry was transferring into this. It was less about like, so it's called like gonzo. So ultimately, it's almost like everything is improv. It's like, here's an idea, go with that. And that was the end of it. But they started doing all these parodies of films and spending like big bucks on these, like, they had a script and actors and castings and blah, 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 blah. So that was just at the time I was coming in the industry. So he was like, "You can be as famous as you want as long as you can do it." And I was like, "All right, I'll give it a shot. Why not?" And I said yes. And then they sent me to go get like, a full panel like test and all that stuff. And my test didn't come back the next day. So it was an opportunity. This is one of many times in my life where I had the opportunity to not do something dumb, but I just waited it out and did it anyway. So I um I waited until the next day, and they really wanted me to do the film, and I did it. And it was so surreal because it was so far from everything I experienced, was so far from what I was told, like even from like people in the industry, because like a lot of the stuff that was being done, it was like run and gun like type of thing, like you hold a camcorder and then like just give the footage to someone or something like that. But like I everything I did, it was like there was like camera A, camera B, there was a boom guy, there was a C light, there was, we were in a giant studio, and it was like so far from, I mean, it felt like to me like some of like the really bad movies I'd acted in, like legitimate movies. Um I did it, and it really seems like I said yes to that. I did that movie. The scene happened, and then I don't know what I was thinking, but like I was kind of seeing someone at the time, and like she obviously like broke up with me, and that she worked at the bar that I was at. So all of a sudden, like I felt stupid, so I didn't go back to that job, and it's like, well, what else am I gonna do? So I just like that was the beginning of me believing the lie that because of the mistake that I made, I can't do anything but continue to live in the mistake. So that one turned into I think I did like my first year, I think I did like 150 movies. And then the next year I did like 250. And then, that was about the average for about 5 years. I did 1,000 films in a 5-year period. And it was crazy. Like I won a ton of awards. I hosted, some shows that were on HBO. I was pretty much any like Skinamax or HBO movie. Like I was offered the lead in those, and I did a ton of those, and traveled all over the world. Like went to Paris, London, Costa Rica, Mexico, like you name it. Like I shot like films like all over the world, and it had been 5 years, and all of a sudden I was like, what the heck happened? Like, so that might be more than you wanted to know, but
That's exactly what. No, that is exactly what I wanted to know, and it definitely brings up some really good questions for me. So after this point, I guess, because I like how constantly I'll give you some things. Like someone insecure at the time.
Yeah.
You used to play the peer comparison games, so these are things that you say in the past tense, which is really nice to hear, and it kind of gives me the idea that at this point you've kind of grown out of those two specific things, insecurity and comparison. I mean, they kind of oftentimes go hand in hand. I'm wondering if this, I mean, how did this happen? What kind of steps did you take?
Yeah. So for me, I had to like really follow my face, because I believed another lie, that if I wasn't participating in the behavior that was damaging to me emotionally and physically, that my emotional and physical pain or my trauma would just evaporate. And that's not true. So I quit. So I quit. It was a culmination of me being very depressed, and like almost like a masochistic, but like masochistic behavior. Like I felt like I was a masochist, because like I knew what I was doing was hurting me, but I believed there was nothing else I could do. So I just dealt with it. I just like dealt with the hurt and became numb to it in a certain degree. And then it just became overwhelming to the point where like I don't think I ever would have had the I don't think I ever would have got to a point where I was seriously considering suicide, but I was walking down that path. I was that depressed, and it took the strangest thing. So I had isolate, because I felt ashamed and I felt used. I felt useless, and I felt that other people viewed me as the same way I saw myself. So I started isolating myself from my parents. I stopped returning, my mom's calls. I stopped returning my brother's calls. My actual friends. I stopped interacting with them, because I was like, you must be viewing me in this way. you must see me the same way I see myself. So I'm sure that you don't want anything to do with me. So I continued to believe these lies, and my lies became truth. And I just isolated myself from everyone. So there was probably a year period where I had stopped, like, I didn't have one relationship in my life that was authentic, and there was no one in my life that even called me by my real name. So I walked into a bank one day and I was cashing some checks or depositing some checks. And as I was leaving, the teller said, "Joshua, is there anything that I can do for you? Can I help you?" And it was weird because the transaction already happened. Like, I already put the checks in my account, I already had the receipt, and I was walking away. And she said that. And it was just like, it was so weird because A, it didn't make sense that what she was saying. And B, like, wow, that was my name. Like, I hadn't heard my name. And the bank that I went to, I'd walked across the street to where it was. So I was walking back, and I had, I have the chills now thinking about it, because I was having this like realization moment, and the first like time in a long time, I actually could feel the consequences of not what I did, but the consequences of who I believed I was and how I was shutting myself away from basically my mom. Like, that's what hurt me the most, because my mom, she had me when she was 16, and she like broke her back like trying to provide for me. And even though like we struggled growing up, I never went without anything. I always had J's with my feet, and I always like went to like every basketball camp or whatever. Like, I never like I never needed something that I didn't have, and most things I wanted I had. And I felt that in that moment, just knowing like how much she had to sacrifice for me to live the life that I lived. And she went through some hard times where she needed me, and I wasn't there, not because I didn't love her, because I believed that I was useless, and I believed that I was dirty. So why would she want a son like me? So I just felt that in that moment. So I literally had this like moment where I went home, and I'm looking myself in the mirror, and I was like, what have I done? Like, I can't go back to that. So I literally pick up the phone, and I'm like, I call these directors and these companies, because at this point I'm in contracts with, companies where, I'm doing X amount of movies for, an allotment of money or whatever. And I'm just like, I'm breaking these contracts, and they're like, well, there's going to be legal ramifications for this. You're gonna have to buy out your contract, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. Whatever it costs, whatever it costs, whatever it costs. And I just wanted to go home. I just wanted to like, I literally just wanted to run home to my mom. And so I subleased my apartment to the first person that I could find. Like, I didn't even care. I was like, here, literally take everything. Like, I had, I had a really nice place. It was just tricked out. And I was just like, I'm just going to take my clothes. You can have everything in it. You don't even have to give me any money. Just pay the rent when it's due. I don't care. And I left. And that's ultimately like was my turnaround moment. But with that, I didn't acknowledge like what I did. I just ran from it. So I pretended for almost 2 years that like it just didn't happen. And I would, I tried to get back into like mainstream modeling and stuff like that. And, I'd maybe even get as far as like booking something. And then it was like, wait, you're that guy. Or a relationship. And like, it would come up because there was just so much content out there. It was literally impossible to even type my name into something and not find that. So I'd gotten into personal training a little bit, and I'd always kind of been in athletics and stuff like that. So I started coaching at a gym, and I even lied to them about like what I was doing in California. Like, well, I didn't lie to them. I just didn't provide the full truth. And like that came up, and I like almost lost my job. And it was just like, just running from what I did for so long. And then I was just tired of it. I was tired of people like, me not being honest and not having integrity and just being ashamed and just burying stuff over and over again. And I was going to go on a run with this girl, and I was just like, I just feel like I need to just let the cat out of the bag, just let her know she's not going to want anything to do with me. But I'm just gonna tell her. I'm just gonna tell her before like this goes any further. I'm just gonna let her know. And I told her everything. I told her things that probably she didn't even want to know. And her response was acceptance. Like she accepted me for who I was, and she spoke life into in my life. She saw me for the person that was standing in front of her, not what I did. And yeah, I mean, like, so like that was a moment where I was like, wow, like I have something to offer. I'm maybe I can turn my life around. And just like her extending love and extending grace to me in that moment was the catalyst for me changing my entire life. So, and that person is now my wife. So,
Love to hear that.
yeah.
Yeah, that is just too perfect.
Well, I'm curious.
Insanely too perfect. It's kind of fun.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I hope my internet's working for this because you guys are all very clear, but then there's like my photo and I'm like not. But I'm curious about your spiritual journey as well. Just from looking at your current content, was that something that you grew up with, and then carried with you throughout all of your life experiences, or something that you really had to rediscover, after you returned back home?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And so so I grew up, I went to church, but I was never like engaged in church. So like I grew up, I would say I knew who God was like at a surface level, but I never knew him in an intimate level. Like I didn't realize there was a relationship aspect to it. And ultimately like that was the question that my now wife asked me. My wife, asked me like, do you know who God is? And I was like, yeah, I believe that God created everything, created me, like, sure. And then she asked me, did you know that you could, are you in a relationship with him? And I was like, say what? I was like, I didn't really know what to say. And then she just like continued to ask me some, really like thought provoking questions. And then she invited me to church the next week. And then like when I went to church and I, gave my life to Christ in that moment, like that is when my life changed. And just like the type of personality that I have and like who I am as a person, anything I do, I'm all in. And, I went from, being this like hurt, broken person. And I think a really important part of my journey is that I did experience deep trauma emotionally and mentally. And I think that I jumped in like not too fast, but like I experienced the shame and the guilt removed from my life. And all of a sudden I had freedom in that way. But relationally, I hadn't healed. So like that was a really long process. But as far as like from a spiritual journey, I went my whole life like hearing about God, but never knowing God. And then all of a sudden I experienced God in such a radical way that I can't go a day without telling someone the freedom is available in Jesus. So.
I mean, it's interesting to hear like you're like you said, your mom was such a huge part of your life for all of it.
Yeah.
But it's just that outside source that comes along, like your wife in this situation, that is the one that kind of flips the switch for you.
Yeah.
And I wonder for a lot of people if that's because they just feel like moms kind of have to be like that. And so I'm wondering what your thought process on that is.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, so, I like from a coaching standpoint, like from like a personal trainer standpoint, like, or any aspect, like as a parent or a leader of any capacity, I think everyone's probably experienced like when you've told someone who is really close to you something over and over again, and then all of a sudden someone articulates the same thing, but just in a different way. Just your relationship causes you to hear things through different lenses. So you're going to, it's like I love the way John Maxwell puts it. He says, no one cares what you know until they know that you care. And you just assume that your mom loves you in a way that, well, you just know I mean, not everyone has that relationship, but just like, I believed my mom loved me because she loved me. And anything that she would say to me, I just heard it through a different lens. So when this person that extended grace to me when I accepted rejection, all of a sudden the words that she had more power and they had more influence in that moment. So like that's for me, and for most people, it's like, as a coach, it's like, I've told you this 1,000 times, and then someone says the same thing that I've said, but just articulates in a different way, or maybe it's not coming from me, then they're going to understand it or hear it differently. So I'm sure everyone's experienced that to some degree.
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure. Being a teacher, I have kids all the time saying no, 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 and then immediately doing what someone else asked them, or vice versa.
Oh, it's the worst. It's the worst. My wife is a teacher as well.
Oh, really? That's all, yeah.
She's English as a second language is what she does.
Oh, really? Where? Just in like where you're living now?
Yeah. So as far as like elementary, so kindergarten to 4th grade or 5th grade.
I'm sure she has some pretty unbelievable stories herself that kind of humble everyone.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like overall, I do want to know, because you were calling it a mistake a couple of times, but at the same time, you kind of seem like a person who doesn't really put regret on things.
Right.
Do some of these decisions, do you regret them? Like, and if so, what weight has that had on your life? Or have you, for the most part, let everything go?
Yeah, I mean, I think like stepping into the realm. So I think I've had the opportunity multiple times to live both lives in this way. Either I can choose to work a 9 to 5 and just kind of shut that part of my life down and like maybe share it like with someone on an intimate level, or I can step into this realm where I have a lot of influence and a capacity that I don't really want, but I'm leveraging that to make something else known or make my message known. So to answer your question, to some degrees, like I don't regret anything I've done, because all of those things are the culmination of who I am now and everything I have now, and nothing I have now would I be willing to sacrifice. But with that said, does that impact me on a daily basis? Absolutely. Does it impact my family? Yes. Has it impacted me on a professional level? Yes. So do those things like carry weight in my life? Yes. But I've grown to the point where now I have the voice to say what power it has over me. And I'm just glad that I have the um, the margin that I have now, in contrast to what it could be. So yeah, like I couldn't say that I regret any of those things, but like, were they mistakes? Yes. Do I want to advocate against them? Absolutely. So I want to leverage who I am and what I've done so that people can either learn from my mistakes or avoid them.
You must be super emotionally intelligent, because man, like you being in the adult film industry and just growing from that and just learning from that, and now you teaching, or like, like letting people know that, your mistakes doesn't have to define you in your life,
Yeah.
and it's just like, how is there anything now in your life that's just like other temptations in your life that makes you want to like maybe, like I should just go back to where it was, or was this a mistake of what I had, or is there anything like that in your life right now that just makes you want to go back, or
Yeah, I would say so. Right after I left, I had those feelings just because I was like, sure, like as far as like on a strength finder, like conversation where it's like like I'm a, my number one strength is an achiever, right? And I'm an incredibly like extroverted like person. So those things feed me and they make me feel good, right? And so like being at one time very famous in some regards, like I would miss those things because I missed being affirmed in that way. So, but it was ultimately an identity crisis because I believed that I wasn't worth anything unless someone made me feel that way. So having a foundation and knowing who I am, and in contrast to what someone may think of me or someone may say of me, I don't need someone else's approval to know who I am. But at the same time, like, I was over 5 years, I made, well over $1 million. And it's like, like obviously like that is a thing where it's like, gosh, like if I just wish I could make that, that type of money, like doing hardly anything, like I didn't have to work very hard, obviously, but, so like missing that like level of influence and that like financial freedom, or that was really hard for me to navigate through initially. But again, I think all of it stemmed from not knowing who I was and just overwhelming insecurity because I felt like I was used. I felt like I was broken. I felt like I was dirty. And that's how I viewed myself. So I needed those other things almost to function like a mask so I could wear those things. So I believed that people would see me and not perceive me as something else.
Going to that affirmation, you recently said that you had a come out that was something you wanted to put out, and it got 6 million views. Can you tell me at the top of that you were restaurants and recognizing you, like the top of your fame, what the difference in that affirmation was? The affirmation that later got from your wife initially, and then 6 million or 70 million people on TikTok, whatever it was.
Right. I think like the excitement behind it is, if more like what I'm passionate about, if more people can hear my message, then the better. Back then it was really about like I got excited about awards and stuff like that. But for me, like what really like fed my ego was like the dollars and cents, because like most like guys starting in the industry make like $200-300 a scene, and the fact that I was making like $900, $1,000, $1,100 a scene, I just like that for me, because like you literally like your value is based on like what you make per scene, like that's how like good you are or whatever, or how valuable you are, or what, or however much like influence like you have. So I think the big difference for me is, at the end of the day, the most important thing for me is to make Jesus known. Like at the end of the day, like that's the most important thing for me. And if I can leverage my past to make my message heard more, then I have more ears. It's like understanding marketing, understanding leverage, understanding, connectivity, visibility, all those things. So it's like the more people that hear my story, or the more like creative I can be on TikTok to get like, because all I want is like, hey, look over here. Well, why have you changed? Great. That's a great question. I can't wait to tell you about who I am today. So like, so I guess that would be the difference. But to be completely transparent, I'm still the same person. So like I'm still human. I still want to be liked. I still want to be affirmed, and like I'm still insecure to some degree. I mean that's just, yeah, I think that when we believe that we can overcome things, like it's true, but I need to understand that like I'll always be scarred to a certain degree, but the difference is I'm not wounded anymore. So a wound can heal, but I'll always have that scar. But my scar is now my story, and I have the power how to tell my story, but I can't always control a wound, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're not doctors here, but the metaphor definitely fits. But I think you had trouble for a while thinking people around you wouldn't accept you. It seemed to be a common problem for you, especially when, like, right at the end, and when you kind of cut everybody out for a year. Did you have that same issue, like taking acceptance from Jesus in this situation? Like, did you feel like he wouldn't accept you, or did that same thought process go through, or was it a different kind of style? I don't know if that makes that much sense, but
It absolutely does. So for me, it was to the point where I was an addict, right? So I could never get enough affirmation because I didn't believe I was good enough. So even though it was like an instantaneous, like momentary high when someone would affirm me, but it wasn't lasting. And after hearing the message of Jesus and understanding like who he is, like I accepted him freely in that moment, but that didn't mean I forgave myself. And then forgiving myself is a process. We are all in process to a certain degree. And I think that is when it comes to like mental and emotional health, we need to know that when we come out, like you take anything, like any kind of addict or any like dramatic like experience in your life, like, can you come out of that? Yes, but healing from that is going to be a process. And if I believe the lie that I don't need to heal and I can just snap my fingers and it's all good, that's not true. And those things are going to just, stay buried down. And if you suppress things, they're going to come out eventually, and they're going to affect different parts of your life. So,
yeah, I think your advocacy is so commendable because you're taking two things that a lot of people would not put together, which is religion, Christianity, and then the adult film industry. And I'm sure that the two rarely cross paths.
you're right.
Only if they do, if only to, I guess, pray for their
Yeah.
saviorship. And I imagine that it's difficult to sort of maybe see fruits of your labor in a very like tangible way.
Yeah.
But do you have contacts still within that industry or peers or friends that you are actively talking to in that sort of way? Or are you more of like just taking your advocacy from a distance and trying to sort of like just reach people on a large scale?
Yeah. So, the answer to that's very deep, but I'm glad you asked. So, for me, yes, there are people that I have in my life that I still talk to, but just like any other occupation, you see that you have your friends and then you have your circumstantial friends, right? So there's people that you're around on a consistent basis that you are cool with when you're hanging out with them and when you're at the job, but removed from that setting, what would you actually have a conversation about? Because really, when you only, so that's the issue with like not really knowing someone, because all of a sudden, if you remove the opportunity to just have continuous small talk, you don't really know that person. So all of a sudden, if you're standing in front of them in a room where you're outside of that situation, you really don't have anything to say. And that kind of reveals the depth of that relationship. And that was kind of what happened. So it's like, yeah, I was cool with a lot of people, but they weren't like my friends. And because of the way I lived my life, I was a recluse in a lot of ways. So like, I would go to parties, but only when I was paid to be there. So I didn't really go out a lot outside of I'm going to do a signing or I'm going to do this or someone's paying me to like sit at this table and like, pop bottles with someone or whatever. Like that was the only time I was really going out. So I wasn't really a big advocate of like, let's go party. Like that really wasn't who I was, because the whole time it was like just a really slow process of me pulling further and further away. But to further answer your question, there was someone that I was really, really close with, but a few months ago, he fell off a balcony in Mexico and died. And that he is one of 30 people who I would say that were in some degree like my friends. Like I had their numbers and we talked on a somewhat of a basis. And they've either overdosed, committed suicide, or put their life in danger, and they've died. And that's 30 people over the last 10 years. So there are a few people that I talk to, like honestly, like just on like social media, like on Twitter or like Instagram, they'll like we'll message back and forth. But I don't think there's one person other than people. There's a few people who they've gotten out of the industry and they're in the not necessarily the same occupation I'm in, but they're in the same lane. So like there's people that like that I talk to on a regular basis. But my advocacy against pornography is directed to consumers, not necessarily people who are participating in the industry. So I am partnered with several organizations that advocate against pornography. So I have a partnership with Covenant Eyes. So Covenant Eyes is it's a software where people can download onto their smart devices, and ultimately you're saying, yes, I acknowledge that this isn't good for me and I want to not consume it. So it's going to track what you consume on your browser, and it's going to send essentially a report to a third party that you choose. And like what you're looking for is like, hey, I don't want to do this thing. I'm writing a book, and this is actually like the meat and the potatoes of it. It's like if I want to stop doing something that I have to first acknowledge that it's hurting me, be honest, and then I need to set a boundary. So it makes it more difficult for me to do the thing I don't want to do. And then probably most importantly, I need accountability. If I can just share what I'm going through with someone, and then have someone have my back, and not a judgmental standpoint where it's like, dude, I got your back. It's like, we're going to have a tough conversation if you do that because you told me that you want me to hold you accountable that way. So, and I think that just like as a trainer, it's like, if I'm going to work with someone, it's like, hey, let's improve your diet. Great. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go home at the end of the day, and before you go to bed, I want you to email me everything that you ate and drank that day. And if you trust me, you're going to have integrity. I trust you. You trust me. So there's no like caveats to that. So you're going to send me everything you ate. So if you ate 13 mini Snickers, we'll say, hey, is that leading you in the direction that you want to go? No, like you can do whatever you want, but you asked me to help you. So I'm telling you that this is not good for you, and it's leading you in an opposite direction that you want to go. So, and that's the same thing. It's like, I don't want to consume this content. Please hold me accountable. And what's going to happen is the same thing with the Snickers. If I have to write it down and I have to send it to you, I'm going to be less likely to do it. And if I can remove the habit of doing it and replace it with something else over time, the hope is I start to make different choices. So.
And do you have any advice now for people that's kind of like want to get out of the adult film industry, or like want to go be better themselves, that want to improve their lives? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah. So not even the number one thing, the thing that keeps people in the industry is because they believe the lie that they can't do anything else. Because they, yes, that tangible evidence of what you did will always be there, but you don't have to allow that to define what you do next. And that is the reason that it leads to people taking their lives, because they believe, if my life is not worth anything, why should I live it? And you start to medicate that insecurity or that pain or that feeling of like worth with something, and that medication always leads somewhere. So just don't believe the lie that you can't be something else, because I 100% believe if you are successful at anything, you can be successful at anything, because it takes a certain person to have the drive, the creativity, the just the ability to show up and give it your best. Like if you can be successful at that, then you can be successful at anything, because it's not what you're doing, it's who you are. And who you are is not rooted in something you're doing like on film. Like you're doing a behavior. You're doing something that, everyone in the world does. So don't allow something you did to define what you do next, and definitely not define who you are, because that's not who you are. Everybody's life is worth something, and everybody has talents and gifts, and there's something that you were meant to do, and it's not that.
All right, with those words, Joshua, we do have to end it there. We want to say, first off, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
It was super awesome. All your answers were so in depth and just really helpful. And I would like to give you a chance to plug whatever is possibly coming up in your life. I heard you said you had a book coming. Tell us your TikTok, whatever possibly you would like people to know about right now. Any of those charities?
Yeah. So my Instagram and my TikTok are both joshua.broome. It's just like the thing you clean with, but it's got an E on the end. I have a book coming out in the spring. The title of that is Prodigal Porn Star. So that's the title of the book. And my ministry is known. And the end of December, we're going to have I don't want to call it like so we're 100% crowdfunded. So you're going to have the opportunity to partner with our organization if you want to be part of that. So, and all of that information will be on my Instagram.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Joshua. You have a wonderful rest of your life.
Hey, bro, you too, man. Thank you so much, guys.